Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
I had a dream.
Hashem told you to dance in a tango contest?
A dancing teacher wants to tango with you?
Critics are raving about Tango Shalom. It's clever and inventive, with right chemistry on and off the dance floor.
You're a lunatic!
A funny and thoughtful family film with a warm heart and a playful spirit. From the director of My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, that's my Fernando.
Tango Shalom. In select theaters now.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your evangelist of the imagination, and the still yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am, as always, Rob-casting at you. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 755. Well, what we'd all hoped for has happened, ladies and gentlemen. Dune, as you've been reading, kind souls, gentle beings, however you identify across the 28 known galaxies, we are going back to Arrakis. That's right. And also they're talking about actually moving forward with the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood series, which is also very exciting. It was in deadline today. It dropped that, yes, indeed, Legendary has decided to move forward with Dune Part 2. Come on, Dune. Everyone's doing it. Dune sequel, greenlit by Legendary and Warner Brothers. Pick will get theatrical window in October of 2023. This comes to us from Anthony D'Alessandro and Justin Kroll, and it dropped at 11 o'clock. Just a couple hours back, 4 hours back. In what comes as no surprise, the sequel for Dune finally has been green-lighted for an October 20th, 2023 theatrical release, with director, producer, and co-screenwriter Denis Villeneuve returning. I mean, just think about that. That's just a little, it's 2 years away. The key word here is theatrical. We understand that a key point of negotiations between Legendary and Warner Brothers was that Dune Part 2, would be given a pure theatrical window, no day and date HBO Max release. Plan is in the mix for this cinema spectacle. This greenlight news was announced Tuesday on Legendary and WB's social accounts. This is only the beginning. Thank you to those who have experienced Dune, the movie so far, and those who are going in the days and weeks ahead. We're excited to continue this journey. While David Lynch's 1984 feature adaptation of Frank Herbert's 412-page 1965 novel crammed the whole story into one movie, it was always part of Villeneuve's vision to spread his reboot across 2 films. Actually, I've heard that he wanted to do 3 films, the way it was described to me, and I'll say this is editorializing. It was going to be Dune, Dune Prophet, and Dune Messiah, and it would actually be Dune and Dune Messiah, the second book, which would chart the rise and fall of Paul Atreides. This is no white savior myth, let me tell you. In fact, just the opposite. Billions die. But, I don't want to ruin that for you. You can read the books yourself. I just received news from Legendary that we are officially moving forward with Dune Part 2. The filmmaker said it was a dream of mine to adapt Frank Herbert's Dune, and I have the fans, the cast, the crew, Legendary, and Warner Brothers to thank for supporting this dream. This is only the beginning. Dune overperformed its domestic projections this past weekend, opening to $41 million, with over half of its ticket sales driven by large format and PLF theaters, which is what I like to see. Half of its ticket sales, that means people are going to see it in IMAX. Dune is Dune is a singular experience in IMAX on a large screen with a large sound system. I cannot stress this enough. Sure, you can watch it, and I know there's a lot of people, every time I say this on this channel, everyone's always coming after me going, well, you know, Rob, I just will stay at home. I don't need to go to a theater. I understand people who have concerns about a global pandemic still going on. I get all that. But I am a huge proponent of the theatrical experience. I think, having worked on films myself, filmmakers work on sound mixes with a whole team of people to create something that, unless you have a killer sound system at home, and in the case of Dune, you'd need a really killer sound system, like at least 14 channels for the Atmos mix to even come close to the theatrical experience. It is an overwhelming theatrical experience, as I have talked about in previous shows. Please go see this in the biggest theater possible with the best projection. Those are usually IMAX venues because they're calibrated correctly for the most part. So anyway, Dune overperformed its domestic projections. Heading into this weekend, we'd heard that Dune had some 12 million in advance ticket sales, more than any other event filmed during the pandemic. The pick was bolstered further by Canada, which delivered 11% of domestic weekend ticket sales. It was on a theatrical window up there since HBO Max isn't available in the country. In regards to its performance on HBO Max, while Warner Media didn't report any sales figures, Samba TV, which measures streaming viewership in 3 million U.S. households, reported that 1.9 million smart TV households watched Villeneuve's Dune over the weekend. Among the theatrical HBO Max titles measured by Samba TV, that is the sixth best weekend debut by a Warner Brothers HBO Max day-and-date title, Mortal Kombat topping that list with 3.8 million. Never count out the gamers. All of this is a great indicator that those who wanted to watch Dune saw it in a movie theater. Warner Brothers launched the movie ahead in overseas markets, where the current global box office stands at $223.2 million. Denis Villeneuve has crafted a film that is both visually extraordinary and emotionally transporting, as evidenced by its global success both critically and at the box office, said Toby Emmerich, chairman of Warner Brothers Picture Group. We are thrilled to continue on this journey with Denis and the cast and crew and our partners at Legendary, and can't wait to bring the next chapter of this epic tale to theaters on October 23rd. Warner Media Studios and Network's chair and CEO Ann Sarnoff told Deadline in a sit-down last week that a Dune sequel was definitely in the cards, with Legendary carrying 80% of the production cost and Warner's the balance. Legendary is pleased to officially move forward with Dune Part 2, once again based on the amazing books written by Frank Herbert, said Legendary. We would not have gotten to this point without the extraordinary vision of Denis and the amazing work of his talented crew, the writers, our stellar cast, our partners at Warner Brothers, and of course, the fans. Here's to more Dune. So that is very exciting, and almost as if on cue, Scott Mendelson dropped an article over at Forbes that I wanted to share with you, because he does go into the actual, is Dune a box office success? Is it? Well, Scott Mendelson, always one to weigh in. Scott Mendelson has something to say, and we're going to look at it. By the way, this article was dropped today at 2:30, literally just over half an hour ago. So thanks for this one, Scott. Dune sequel announcement creates the impression of worldwide box office success. Of course, Scott, you do cover the film industry. Well, that was fast, says Scott. Legendary and Warner Brothers have officially announced that they are indeed making Dune Part 2. The news came just days after the film's pretty decent $41 million domestic debut, as well as $3.65 million on Monday, down 63% from Sunday, and $44.65 million for 4-day Cume for the much-discussed $165 million sci-fi flick. Denis Villeneuve will again return in the director's chair with a second film, which will detail the second half of Frank Herbert's epic sci-fi novel. Since Legendary put up 80% of the $165 million budget, with Warner Brothers fronting the rest, it was Legendary's call. But why move so quickly? Well, more than anything else, it's about creating the impression that Dune is absolutely a success. They think Dune Part 2 will perform better theatrically amid more conventional circumstances than Dune Part 1, which is still likely going to end up with 375 to 405 million worldwide. Announcing a sequel creates the impression of success. Think Jungle Cruise 2 and Cruella 2, and encourages folks to check out the movie without fear of ending on a cliffhanger. Legendary perhaps wants to put itself in a rosier position to get purchased by a conglomerate. Furthermore, whether or not Dune makes money theatrically is less of a concern as long as it's perceived as a COVID-era theatrical success and or a launching pad for an HBO Max television show. Absent that, it'd still be a slight disappointment in relation to cost. The film's $41 million domestic debut is better than the likes of Jupiter Ascending and Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets. Ouch. But still on par with Tomorrowland and Power Rangers. That's a $165 million budgeted movie would be declared an unmitigated hit after earning about as much worldwide as The Mummy, Edge of Tomorrow, or even The Legend of Tarzan. It's either a spin or firm belief that would have performed better in non-COVID circumstances. That may be correct, as even a 15% better opening weekend, around $47 million, would be on par with The Meg and Mad Max Fury Road, both of which logged out to over or under $145 million domestic. The good news is that history shows, think Breaking Dawn Part 2, Avengers Endgame, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and all 3 Lord of the Rings movies, that if folks show up and enjoy Part 1 of, they'll show up for Part 2 in bigger numbers. With an A- from CinemaScore, mostly positive reviews, a likely place at the awards season table, and a few likely tech Oscar wins, and the current positive media coverage spinning Dune Part 1 as the next Fellowship of the Ring, I'd probably have greenlit a second film too. It's more useful as a complete adaptation versus half a movie, although I would have waited to see the second weekend hold. Okay, Scott. All right. Just because Legendary has announced a Dune sequel doesn't mean we're actually getting one, as folks waiting for Star Trek IV, announced by Paramount days before Star Trek Beyond bombed with $338 million on a $185 million budget in the summer of 2016, can attest. Nor does this all mean that Dune Part 2 will even be as successful as its predecessor, as fans of Pacific Rim Uprising, $290 million versus $411 million for Pacific Rim, can attest. That said, boy, Scott, I just got to say, Scott, you are somebody, you like to stir the pot, don't you? I don't think that Star Trek IV, which has had 10 different iterations announced, if you want to even include the Quentin Tarantino version, or Pacific Rim Uprising are comparable to a long-time science fiction literary classic that has enthralled generations for decades. It's not really the same thing. That said, Dune Part 2 will offer up more of the action-adventure components. Think Quantum of Solace after Casino Royale. Will actually co-star Zendaya versus a cameo, and will open sans the HBO Max release and not in the middle of a pandemic. At worst, it'll negate concerns that franchise potential fell victim to helping HBO Max. Also, Wonder Woman 84, see that. Dune Part 2, again starring Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, and, no spoilers, whomever survived the first film, will open theatrically on October 20th, 2023. That's a week after Universal and Blumhouse's first of a 3-part mega-budget Exorcist trilogy, which is intended as a kind of theater's Peacock dual proposition. That's ironic, or a peek at the future, whereby even successful theatrical franchises are backdoor pilots or pawns in the pursuit of streaming-friendly IP. Barring incredible legs, Dune Part 1 won't actually make money in raw theatrical review, but that we're for now getting a sequel is a sign that it may not matter. Denis Villeneuve, then the quotes I already read, that you've already seen, so there you go. Now here, I gotta say, Scott, I know you're being a contrarian and you're trying to paint a picture that, first of all, you know, there is long-term value to movies like Dune. If you want to look at, say, call it home video, the way home video used to work, which it doesn't work anymore, but movies that people come back to over and over and over again have long-term, long-tail value. And I do believe that Dune is one of those things. Now, is Dune for everyone? No. Does it require a certain level of patience? Yes. Is the movie perfect? I don't think it is perfect. I don't think it's perfect if only because it ends in the middle. And it doesn't really... Paul's story is it basically tees up Paul's journey. The original script that I read, that Eric Roth, John Spates, and Denis Villeneuve had written, that I did cover on this show, and almost got deplatformed because I did that. It ended with Paul taking the water of life. Now, if you know the story, that would have been a different place to end it, but fairly different from where it ends now, for those of you who know the story. But I think that something like Dune, not just because it's going to do well at awards time, but I think I think we're going to be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised now if the movie makes $500 million, which puts it definitely squarely in profitability at some point. Maybe not huge profitability, but it is a prestige picture, and that's the kind of business that Warner Brothers wants to be in. This is definitely something, it's a movie people are talking about. Who knows how many people are going to end up watching it on HBO Max. I hope as many people. If you haven't seen Dune yet, I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to go see it in the theater. That is probably the best place to go see it, is in the theater. Only because it's such a transportive theatrical experience. And a lot of people, and I'm going to get, every time I say that, I get people in the comments or people sending me DMs or something. Well, Rob, the theatrical experience is over. Well, here's the thing. I believe that our civilization, one of the things that's going to face us in the 21st century, besides climate change, besides all of these actual physical things that are going to come down the pike that we're going to have to deal with, we're also going to, I keep harking back to Yuval Harari's book, Sapiens, and his second book, Homo Deus. And at the end of Sapiens, which is, for those of you who might not know, it's about 100,000 year history of mankind. And when Yuval Harari gets to the end of Sapiens, he basically makes the point that mankind, like Steven Pinker would tell you, is better off now than it's been in a long time. That humankind, we're doing all right, despite all the other things that are facing us. But I think where we are, especially in this country, we are in the midst of I don't know what you would call it, but we have a culture problem. And I think that there is this idea that all of the past of human history is somehow toxic in some way. Look, all of human history is toxic. If you want to go back and you want to see how horrible we've been to one another, you can go back 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 5,000 years. However far you want to go back. And we're in the midst, especially here, of wanting to tear down Western civilization, which I really don't understand. Western civilization has been clawing, kicking, and screaming to get us to where we are now, and it's done a pretty good job of it. Now, has it done it on the backs of many people? Yes. Yes, it has. But yet, here we are. And our civilization, all of it, the good and the bad, represents hundreds, if not thousands of years of struggle. But nowadays, I feel, and I'm only using moviegoing as a microcosm of what I'm trying to explain. See, the thing is, moviegoing from its conception was considered, as it developed over the early part of the 20th century, as sort of grand entertainment. It was an art form, cinema, it didn't exist before. We had dance, we had music, we had theater, but movies were something new. Movies were something that couldn't have existed until the late 1900s, or the late 1800s. And one of the great things about movie going was the experience of it. Nowadays, all we're doing is consuming stories. We're consuming movies on only one level. And I would say what we don't want to lose, and I use this as a microcosm of our culture, we are everything, we're taking it all for granted. Content is just content, and everybody's just let me consume it. And yet, half of the experience of going to the movies is the part of the art form. It's that's why you go. Now, the mauling of America in the late 70s and 80s, and everybody was making smaller and smaller theater screens, because I understand, based on economic realities. But I grew up, all of the theaters that I went to, for the most part, where I saw movies, everything from Logan's Run to Superman the movie, to The Spy Who Loved Me, to Star Wars, Empire, Alien, pick all of the major Jaws, all of the major films, and I would start 1975, when Jaws came out, all the way up to really the present day. Most of the experiences I had that were memorable in movie theaters were in large enveloping environments, where you went and saw movies on big screens with big sound systems. The UA-150, my favorite theater growing up, where I did see Star Wars, and I did see Alien, and I did see, well, next door, Dawn of the Dead, or Big Trouble in Little China, or Buckaroo Banzai, or whatever. I went to that theater countless times. But it was a big experience in a big auditorium that was, it made movie going special. And I think, the idea of going out to a theater and having a special experience. When you sit in a theater and you're enveloped by darkness and you're sitting amongst maybe 1,000 or 1,500 other souls that are going to respond to a movie either, differently or the same as you, but you're all having this communal experience where nothing else matters. The outside world has been darkened away. It's not even there. It might not, you might as well be floating in space when you watch a movie because nothing should matter except the story that's going to unfold in front of you. And the great thing about being in a movie theater is your mind, your senses, unless your mind is wandering, but you're razor focused. So the experience of seeing a movie, seldom in life can you enjoy something like that in that way. When you sit down and you're captivated by a story, there's nothing going on. All those assholes that take out their phones, they're ruining it for you because they don't understand what that means. They can't even focus like that, and those people are lost, and those people need to train themselves. Put your fucking phone away. What's so important? What text message do you have to read? That somebody looked at your TikTok video or that you got likes on Instagram? When you go to the movies, shut your fucking phone off and open up your mind. And that experience in the theater, I know some people reject, oh, come on, Rob. Well, you know what? You're fucking wrong. You're fucking wrong, and you need to focus. Part of the problem with our society is you. And I'm saying that in terms of what it means to go to the movies. And it's happening to all of our culture. All of our culture. It's like everything's taken for granted. It's not special. No, we imbue things with meaning. We make them meaningful. And if we're deciding as a culture that nothing means anything anymore, like, who cares? It's just a movie, then we're diminishing our entire civilization. Why do we need to go to that museum and see those photos or those pictures hanging on the wall? They were painted hundreds of years ago. What do they matter? Well, they do matter. Our culture and our civilization only matters because we say it does. And there is an erosion happening. And I see it. I'm using moviegoing as one of my favorite things, but it's the idea that you don't need to go experience a movie in a movie theater. I'll just watch it at home. No, you are missing out on the joy of the experience. And Dune is the kind of movie where if you watch it at home, you are missing out on the experience the filmmakers have tried to provide for you. You are doing yourself a disservice. Now, also, I know most people, I don't care. But you should care because this is happening across this is happening across Western civilization. And I think it's happening more in America than probably anywhere else in the world because Europeans grow up around art. Their buildings are thousands of years old in some cases. You can go to a pub and drink and it was built in the 12th century. People understand that we're part of a continuum of human history, of human accomplishments. Nowadays, I see it all around me. Nobody gives a fuck. And it really bothers me. What does it matter, Rob? You're an old man screaming at the clouds. No, you know what's going to happen? One day you're going to wonder, part of the reason your life is feeling so empty and miserable is because you've decided nothing matters to you. Nothing matters to you. Even think about video games. When you have a great system, whether you're sitting in a gaming chair, you've got great headphones, or the better your system is, the bigger your screen, the better the gaming experience. And that's what we're missing. And Dune in a theater, in an IMAX theater, represents the very best kind of movie-going experience. Now, you could say to me, well, Rob, I really didn't dig it. Dune was boring. I didn't quite understand what was going on. That's very fair. That's a legitimate criticism. If you don't like Dune, I feel you. I can't make you like Dune, and really, Dune's not everyone's cup of tea, and I can respect you and I can sympathize. But I will say this: I think that part of the experience of Dune is seeing it in that theater with a big sound system on a big screen, because that's how it was made. While it's showing on a screen, it wasn't made to be seen on a TV screen first. I mean, of all the movies I've seen in a long time, that movie demands to be seen on a big screen. Demands it. I would dare say, in a way, so does The Eternals. You know, if you see The Eternals on a big screen, I think you can enjoy it more as well. I believe that all movies. I don't care if you're watching The Shawshank Redemption. I don't care if you're watching Jerry Maguire. I don't care if you're watching When Harry Met Sally. Doesn't matter to me. What I do think is amazing is when you get to go into a movie theater and see any of those movies on a giant screen with a great sound system. There's no better experience. There's no better way to see a film. And we're forgetting what that means. Anyway, let me get off my fucking high horse. Now, I did want to read one more article that I found because I thought it was interesting. Paul Krugman, who doesn't usually write articles like this in the New York Times, wrote this article. And I found this quite interesting. Now, lest we forget, Dune is not the only big sci-fi literary adaptation that is now gracing our screens. We've also got Apple Plus's adaptation of Isaac Asimov's Foundation books. It's a very loose adaptation, but it's a hard thing to adapt, but quite interesting. But Paul's article that he wrote today, Dune is the movie we always wanted. The blogger John Rogers once noted that there are two novels that can shape the lives of bookish 14-year-olds. Atlas Shrugged and The Lord of the Rings. One of these novels, he asserted, is a childish fantasy that can leave you emotionally stunted. The other involves orcs. Well, gosh, Ayn Rand, come on. Stick up for the old lady. She's not so bad. And I did read Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead when I was like 14. Well, I was a bookish 14-year-old, but my touchstones were two different novels, Isaac Asimov's Foundation and Frank Herbert's Dune. Many social scientists, it turns out, are science fiction readers. For example, quite a few experts on international relations who I know are fanatics about the TV version of The Expanse. I think it's because good science fiction involves building imaginary worlds that are different from the world we know, but in interesting ways that relate to the attempt to understand why society is the way it is. Anyway, that's my excuse for devoting today's newsletter not to the latest scary developments in politics and economics, but to a much happier event. The U.S. release of a wonderful, satisfying film version of Dune, the first movie I've seen in a theater since the pandemic began. Before I get there, however, a word about the new Foundation TV series, which is being released one episode a week on Apple TV. The Foundation trilogy had a huge impact on my teenage self. For those who've never read it, it's about the social scientists who use their knowledge to save galactic civilization. I wanted to be Harry Seldon, the brilliant mathematician who leads the effort. This economics thing was as close as I could get. Foundation might seem unfilmable. It mostly involves people talking, and its narrative inverts the hero saves the universe theme that burns across many acres of CGI every year. The story spans centuries. In each episode, everything appears to be on the brink, and it seems as if only desperate efforts by the protagonists can save the day. But after each crisis, Seldon's pre-recorded hologram appears to explain to everyone what just happened, and why the successful resolution was the inevitable given the laws of history. So how does the Apple TV series turn this into a visually compelling tale? It doesn't. What it does instead is remake Star Wars under another name. There are indispensable heroes, mystical powers, even a Death Star. These aren't necessarily bad things to include in a TV series, but they're completely antithetical to the spirit of Asimov's writing. Pretending that the series has anything to do with Foundation novels is fraudulent marketing, and I've stopped watching. Now on to Dune. The book is everything Foundation is, the book is everything Foundation isn't. There's a glittering, hierarchical society racked by intrigue and warfare, a young hero of noble birth who may be a prophesied messiah, a sinister but alluring sisterhood of witches, fierce desert warriors, and of course giant worms. And yes, it's fun. When I was a teenager, my friends and I would engage in mock combat in which the killing blow had to be delivered slowly to penetrate your opponent's shield, which will make sense if you read the book or watch the movie. What makes Dune more than an ordinary space opera are two things: its subtlety and the richness of its world building. Thus, the Bene Gesserit derive their power not from magic, but from deep self-control, awareness, and understanding of human psychology. The journey Paul Atreides is heroic, The journey of Paul Atreides is heroic but morally ambiguous. He knows that if he succeeds, war and vast slaughter will follow. And the world Herbert created is given depth by layers of cultural references. He borrowed from Islamic and eruditic traditions, from European feudalism, and more. Dune represents cultural appropriation on a, interstellar scale. It's also deeply steeped in fairly serious ecological thinking. So why was the 1984 film a disaster? Because the director, yes, David Lynch, either didn't grasp the subtlety and the richness or decided that audiences couldn't handle it. That is, he did to Dune what Apple TV has done to Foundation. For example, in the book, there's the weirding way of battle, which is about using psychology and deception to overcome foes. In Lynch's film, this was replaced with some kind of gadget. The great thing about Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1 is that he respects the audience enough to retain the book's spirit. He trimmed the narrative to reduce it to a filmable size, and even so, his 2.5 hours cover only the first half of the book. But he didn't dumb it down. Instead, he relies on spectacle and spine-tingling action to hold our attention despite the density of the story. In so doing, he made a film worthy of the source material. I agree with that, Paul. I wouldn't say that this Dune matches the vision I had when I was reading the book. It's better. The visuals surpass my imagination. Those ornithopters. The actors gave the characters more depth than the book's author previously had in my mind. Will this labor of love sell to a mass audience and allow Villeneuve to finish his story? The early box office looks good, and this does seem like the kind of film people will see twice. I did. So sales may hold up longer than usual. But I guess we'll find out. In any case, all of us former bookish 14-year-olds finally have the Dune movie we always wanted to see. Sometimes things actually go right. So those are the kind of things I wanted to read today. These articles looking at Dune from different perspectives. I mean, you know me and my literary sci-fi. One of the great things I think about The Expanse, and I'm looking forward to The Expanse season 6, is it is based on books. So the filmmakers and the people involved know where they're going, know what they're doing, as opposed to, say, the hideous trash fire that is modern Star Trek. And you know what? I'll even freely admit it. I never thought I'd say this, but Lower Decks, the final episode of Lower Decks season 2, I kind of liked it. You know? But it's really sad when they're spending as much money as they're spending on Picard and Discovery that the best Star Trek we get is an animated spoof of Star Trek. That's very, very telling. And it's interesting that Alex Kurtzman and Jenny Lumet announced today their initiative to have people of color and new creators. They're going to help those new creators along. I admire that they're doing that. I do. I just wish that, well, Star Trek Discovery would inspire people to become creators on their own. So no one needs Alex Kurtzman and Jenny Lumet to hold their hands. I'd rather see people go out there, people of color, BIPOC, whatever you want to identify as. You get to make your own creations. You don't need somebody to hold your hand and help you do it. You go out on your own, like people like Spike Lee did, or John Ridley, or any of the great filmmakers that I'm following today. But that's all right. I still think it's a good idea, so I will give it up for them for doing that. But it would be nice if we live in a world where people are inspired to create on their own because they know they have something really great to say to us. Anyway, what can I say? That's what's on my mind today. Let's see what's on your mind. I know I'm really behind in letters. Mike was let me see if I can wow, there's all kinds of I've got all kinds of emails today from people. There's a lot of new projects percolating, hence the emails. The first letter comes from our friends over at Twin Flicks. Paul Gilmore, one of Los Bros over Twin Flicks. Hi, Rob. I am typing this on my phone waiting for a doctor appointment. So if I misspell anything, please correct and forgive me. I hope you can read this on your show. I wanted to address gun safety on sets after the unfortunate and saddening event that took place yesterday where Halna Hutchins' life was taken. Now, first, a blank is not really a blank. It's still held in a cartridge and is cased in what looks like half a bullet casing. And if that is shot, it comes out just like a bullet and can hurt or even kill you by force and impact. When I interviewed Alex Proyas, he didn't want to talk about Brandon Lee because it's still very painful for him. However, he did tell me off-air that is how Lee was killed. Everyone thought the gun was unloaded, but it still had a blank casing in the barrel and killed him. In my own personal experience, as I'm sure you've had, Rob, you've worked on sets that had gun safety done correctly and also incorrectly. Now, in my case, mostly correctly, even on femme fatales that I was directing. In case your audience is unfamiliar of how guns are supposed to be handled on and around a set, an armorer is hired to teach the actor how to hold a gun correctly, so he knows and looks like he knows what he's doing and how to handle a gun correctly. He will unload the gun, the magazine, and show the actor if it's a perfectly safe empty gun, and when it is time to shoot the scene, ensuring it's an empty unloaded gun by both the prop master, armorer, and the actor. The actor will shoot the gun, however, since it's empty, it sounds and feels someone like a toy pop gun. Nothing happens except a click sound, and you can easily add in a sound effect, muzzle flash, smoke, and make it look legit and sexy, all in post, especially now with today's technology. Today, the only reason to have a blank cartridge in the gun is if the director is, for a lack of a better word, an idiot. There's absolutely zero reason to have any blanks on set. It doesn't matter what size of production, having a blank doesn't make it look more real. You cannot tell in real life or on screen. After this tragic event, something has to be put in place to secure a set from this ever happening again. I can't imagine what Alec Baldwin must be feeling right now, and my heart goes out to the family, the Hutchins family. This set was not safe, and it was not secure. And I hope this will ignite a fire under the asses to have tighter security on sets, low budget, high budget. It shouldn't matter. The doctor's calling me now, but these are my thoughts. Thanks for reading this, Rob. Paul Gilmore from Twin Flicks. Well, Paul, I couldn't agree with you more as someone who's both produced and directed and has been on sets with firearms. Firearm safety is of paramount importance. How this could possibly happen. You know, I heard some disturbing things that we haven't heard yet, or at least I haven't read, that it was actually a live round, or was it something? Was there something in the barrel? Were they monkeying around with guns, as I heard reported today? I read an article that said that there was maybe they were firing live rounds during, I don't know, break time at lunch. I just, the fact that this might have been a live round on a set is just abhorrent to me. It shouldn't have ever happened. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's just terrible. Beyond terrible. I can't even imagine how something like this. It's just hideous, absolutely hideous, and it's something people will be talking about for a long time to come, and it's going to be looked at, and it's a bummer. It's a bummer. And good letter, Omar 94. Hi, Rob, moderators, and Post-Geek Singularity. Something of which is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine is when movies are set around a certain time of year, but they don't actually come out in theaters around that time. That's funny. E.T. takes place around Halloween, but the movie came out during the summer of 1982. Lethal Weapon takes place around Christmas, but the movie came out in March of 1987. Yo, Die Hard, the great Christmas movie, or Gremlins, another great Christmas movie, they also came out in the summer, respectively, 84 and 87, or 88. Die Hard was 88, Gremlins was 84. I know it's not that big of a deal to others, but just a little pet peeve of mine. If I made those movies, I would have them come out around the time the stories are set. Like I would have E.T. come out around Halloween, and I would have Lethal Weapon come out around Christmas. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, it's like all of Shane Black's movies are Christmas movies. Iron Man 3, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I guess The Predator. Yeah. So, I think that's a little weird to be worried about that because, does it really matter? I mean, I can understand, Home Alone comes out around the holidays because it's a holiday movie, but it never really bothered me. I kind of liked seeing a movie set at Christmas coming out at summer. when I saw Gremlins. I mean, I like that sort of Norman Rockwell-esque that gets set upon by the Mogwais. I mean, but I understand. You can feel that way. I'm not going to skewer you for that one. Nor would I. Rhett Proctor writes in and says, I think I already read this, but you know what? I'm going to read it anyway. Rhett Proctor says, "Hey Rob, buckle up. This is going to be long. Back in 2018, I discovered Cobra Kai from my cousin who watched all the Karate Kid movies in the 80s and told me about it. And I watched it on YouTube Red. Needless to say, I was hooked from the very beginning because it's awesome. And I went in cold because I'd never watched the Karate Kid movies before then. That's interesting. I went back and watched all 3 movies, and I love them. I say this without Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother. I don't think the show would be around. It really has brought on a new generation of Karate Kid fans. I honestly became a Johnny Lawrence fan after episode 1, and part of that is Williams Botka's performance. Not to discredit Ralph Macchio, he's still great as Daniel LaRusso. If it wasn't for Cobra Kai, I probably wouldn't have ever watched the movies or be the fan that I am today. But after 3 seasons and the 4th season to release in December, I'm curious how far they can take the story with season 5 already in the works. My question is to you, is where will the show eventually end? Ooh. Thanks, Rob, and have a great day. Well, Red, first of all, I'm with you. I started watching, Cobra Kai was the first and only thing I ever watched on YouTube Red. I was like, YouTube Red? What? But, I did watch it. I think, here's, again, I know people are going, oh, here he goes. No, I'll try and stay away from Star Trek. But to me, if you're going to reboot something, I think Cobra Kai is a perfect template on how to do it. You bring back the original cast, the fact that you're looking at, 35 years later? And I think that's what makes it compelling. And the people that are making Cobra Kai have my God, the reverence they have for all 3 Karate Kid movies just keeps increasing. You're like, my God, these are deep cuts. How deep are they going to go? How deep is your love, the Bee Gees sang? Well, if you want to know how deep your love can go, watch Cobra Kai. Because I don't think that there's ever been a group of creators that have liked something more than the creators who like Cobra Kai. They love Cobra Kai, but they love the Karate Kid movies too. That's the way to do it, man. Where do I think it's going to end? I think it's going to keep going. As long as people like the characters and the story, season 5, I never thought it would get this far. But you know what? It remains compelling. And they're going to keep bringing in characters from the original films, which I'm all for that. But I don't know where it's going to go. I really don't. Are they going to eventually... I do think the story ultimately... It ultimately has to be a story where at some point you get to a place in your life where you're okay. I think. I guess. We'll see. I don't know where they're gonna go. I'm looking forward to it though. We know we're getting 2 more seasons at least. And I have no idea where it's going to go. Ladies and gentlemen, this one's been a long time coming. Willow Yang and another Star Trek review. But this time, she's been watching Voyager. And, I'm just going to let her take it away. As you all know, for those of you who don't, Willow Yang is a cornerstone member here at the Post-Geek Singularity. And her reviews, I live for them. And you can read more of her reviews on the website, theburnettwork.net. And you can also send us letters there. Look for Willow Talk. So take it away, Willow. Oh, hi, Rob. I'm writing my thoughts on another comedic Voyager episode, The Bride of Chaotica. To give a recap, on the holodeck, Paris and Kim are going through an episode of The Adventures of Captain Proton, a parody of the 1930s serials like Flash Gordon. In the program, Paris plays the titular hero who is fighting against the evil Dr. Chaotica, an obvious parody of Ming the Merciless, who lives in the Fortress of Doom and has a death ray. Their role-playing is interrupted, however, by a subspace distortion that prevents the program from getting shut down. Voyager has apparently gotten trapped, and over the course of the next few days, various systems on board the ship, including the replicator and the latrine, start failing. Meanwhile, a few humanoids from the fifth dimension, where life forms are all apparently photonic, beam into the program and are captured by Chaotika's minions. The aliens inform Chaotica that they are peaceful explorers, but Chaotica kills one of them, instigating a full-blown war between the holographic villain and the fifth dimension aliens. The Voyager crew learns about the conflict and deduce that they must defeat Chaotica in order to escape from the subspace distortion. Janeway, after some convincing from Paris, takes on the role of Queen Arachnia, an evil and seductive alien whom Chaotica is apparently in love with, while the Doctor, being a photonic individual himself, takes on the role of the President to negotiate with the fifth dimension aliens. Janeway, performing the role of Arachnia suspiciously well for a supposed first-timer, successfully outwits Chaotica and deactivates the shield that's protecting his fortress, enabling Paris to destroy his death ray. Chaotica dies, but vows that he'll return. The end? Chaotica's evil laughter. If I have to nitpick, the one element of The Bride of Chaotica that I think could have been done a little better is the depiction of the fifth dimension aliens. I do think that is extremely creative for Voyager to do a holodeck episode, but distinguish itself from the numerous others that Star Trek has done, Elementary Dear Data, A Fistful of Datas, Our Man Bashir, to name a few examples, by having the holodeck getting entangled with a new alien life form that is entirely photonic-based. Just the premise itself, an alien race engaging in a full-out war against the holodeck program, unaware that it's all a simulation, is pretty hilarious. However, I do firstly find the design of the aliens to be, well, a little lackluster. I mean, they are just humans in old-fashioned clothing, which I guess allows them to fit in well with the setting. Furthermore, I do find the ultimate resolution with the Doctor simply appearing to one of them and assuring them that his people will defeat Chaotica themselves to be a bit anticlimactic. I really wish that I could have gotten a little more interaction between the Doctor and the aliens, who apparently consider him to be the only real person of the entire Voyager crew, which is, of course, the inverse of reality in our world. That aside, I found The Bride of Chaotica to be absolutely delightful. Even though I'm admittedly not too familiar with vintage serials and haven't watched the 1980 Flash Gordon. What? You haven't watched the 1980 Flash Gordon? What? I haven't watched the 1980 Flash Gordon. I still got a huge kick out of seeing the homage that the episode paid to that era of science fiction and fantasy. Well, actually, it was paying homage to the 40s version, not the 80s version. But, you know, I get what you're saying. I still got a huge kick out of seeing the homage that the episode paid to that era of science fiction and fantasy. Everything, the musical score, the lines of dialogue, and the makeup and costumes were impeccable. I loved all the guest stars that were brought on for the episode, most notably Martin Rayner as the titular Chaotica and Nicholas Worth as his main henchman, Lonzak. The acting was delightfully campy and over the top, and I had a smile on my face throughout the entire episode. And of course, Kate Mulgrew was pitch perfect in her rendition of Chaotica's lover, Queen Arachnia. Now, I've always found it a bit strange how Starfleet officers, whenever they participate in holodeck simulations or went undercover in real life, always appear to be really good actors that are able to blend in perfectly with the environment. Is acting and improv a mandatory course in Starfleet Academy? In any case, Janeway seems just a bit too good in her role as the evil alien queen. Perhaps she's secretly been playing with the Captain Photon program on the side. Oh, I guarantee you she has been. In addition to Janeway, I thought every other character was given a great role in this episode. Paris had probably the most important part, being the one who was the most familiar with the program and the story, and it was just very entertaining watching him having to explain the world and the characters to the rest of the crew. I've always liked the dynamic that he has with Kim, where Paris is always the one who comes up with the ideas, and sometimes very bad ones, and Kim just reluctantly tags along. And I really enjoyed the cold open of the two of them playing in the simulation. I also really enjoyed the interaction Paris had with Tuvok, who is, of course, less than impressed by his hobbies, making the somewhat snide remark at one point, "I'm sure you two were very close," when they came across the body of Proton's secretary, who had no lines throughout the episode other than screaming hysterically. I absolutely loved Chaotica's robot. Probably the funniest moment of the episode for me was the scene where Paris and Tuvok encounter one of the photonic aliens and attempt to explain to them that they are fighting a war against a simulation, only for the robot to interject with, "Citizen of the fifth dimension, you will be destroyed," causing the alien to shoot him. The robot's subsequent damage, require maintenance, help, coupled with the exasperated look on Paris's face as the alien flees from the scene, thus ending their negotiations, had me in stitches. Even though I do wish that there could have been more interaction between him and the photonic aliens, the Doctor was absolutely great, as he always is, in the relatively short amount of screen time that he was given. Even Neelix was somewhat entertaining as he struggles to keep order and maintain morale while the lavatories on board the ship are down for maintenance. All in all, The Bride of Chaotica is yet another great comedic example from Voyager. Pardon me. All in all, The Bride of Chaotica is yet another great comedic episode from Voyager. It may not exactly be heady, it may not present many new ideas or challenging moral dilemmas, but it certainly succeeds in providing 45 minutes of pure entertainment and delight and pay homage to old-timey science fiction. Live long and prosper, Willow. Well, once again, Willow, a fantastic letter, and you know how much I love hearing from you. So, thanks for you for writing that one in. Now, this is actually I will save this. I'm going to say I have a letter here that I'm going to save. Actually, yeah. Well, you know what? I'm just going to jump over and see. Let's see. Well, hang on. Here's another one. Well, that's not one either. Brian Knight. He asks why we haven't seen a spoiler review or non-spoiler review of Tango Shalom on the John Campea show. I don't know, because I think John hasn't seen it. So there you go. Pedro Ferreira, our friend Pedro. Pedro's here. It's a review of the movie Trekkies. Now, for those of you, full disclosure, I don't know what he's going to say about this. I, of course, and my ex-wife are in Trekkies too, and if you get that DVD, we're all over the special features as well. Pedro, Trekkies or Trekkers? I'm still trying to figure out what fans of Star Trek should call themselves. Roger Nygard's documentary film on Star Trek fandom, Trekkies from 1997, I had hoped had answered that question, hence the doc's title, but nope, I am none the wiser. The film was an attempt to explore this complex fandom through showing its weird and sometimes extreme dedication, but also show how it has helped people in their lives. Clearly, Star Trek means something to them, so what is it about Gene Roddenberry's creation that continues to excite people years after its creation? As a fan, it also meant something to me, so this documentary was a way of providing some answers I was hopeful for. It all came about when, having just finished production on High Strung, 1991, with Star Trek The Next Generation actress Denise Crosby, she and director Roger Nygard decided on the idea of doing a documentary looking at the fans of Star Trek with Crosby as a host. The film was previewed in 1997, and the success of that preview eventually got the documentary a proper theatrical release a few years later. The film's release, opposite a major movie like Star Wars Episode I The Phantom Menace, no doubt, however, ended up hurting its chances to do better. Another movie had its chances hurt too, called Free Enterprise, but we'll get into that later. Star Trek has maybe the most devoted fandom in history. It's also a huge merchandising franchise the fans are more than eager to take part in, spending their hard-earned cash in an attempt to feel like they're part of that universe. The most dedicated fans will call themselves Trekkies, people such as a local juror who arrives to trials in her Starfleet uniform, a man who spends his free time constructing props from the show, a couple who dress their pet up in Starfleet clothes, or how about a group attending a school to learn Klingon? But what makes a Trekkie? Join Tasha Yar herself, Denise Crosby, as she interviews these fans and tries to understand just what makes someone a diehard fan of Star Trek. My first thought watching this documentary was that it looked like it had been shot in the 70s, not the 1990s, so that's very odd. My second thought is that it's fair to say Trekkies doesn't quite gel with the franchise we have today. At this time of typing, the best thing I can say about modern Star Trek is that it's uneven. You're being kind. It is not Gene Roddenberry's vision, and if it is, it has been twisted for partisan politics. That is me being polite about the franchise under its current leadership. Yes, it is. Nygard's documentary feels like a time capsule to when the franchise's popularity was at its peak in both making money but also in its creativity. Star Trek First Contact had just been released, while the two TV series on at the time, Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager, were gaining prominence among fandom. The merchandise was earning billions. It's the love of the franchise that did that, and rightly or wrongly, Trekkie shows that the more shall we say, the dedicated side of fandom. Shows the more, shall we say, dedicated side of blah, blah, blah. For instance, interviewed here is Barbara Adams, most famous for turning up on the jury of the Whitewater scandal in a Starfleet uniform. She's still the local juror going there all suited up. For her day job, she wears her own clothes, although she not only wears her away team equipment to work, but insists on being called Commander. Her colleagues don't mind, but find it a little peculiar. Dennis Bourguignon and his wife run a dental surgery outfit called Florida's Starbase Dental, based on, you guessed it, Star Trek. The surgery is filled with Star Trek merchandise. I'm not sure if any of it makes anyone feel more comfortable going, but hey, at least if Dennis loses a tooth, he can blame it on a space-time continuum retcon. Meanwhile, David and Laurel Greenstein dress up their dog in a Starfleet uniform, while another man has legally changed his name to James T. Kirk. Elsewhere, one eager fan, Richard Kronfeld, goes to great lengths to construct props from Star Trek, including a full-size replica of Captain Pike's total life support unit. One of the documentary's best scenes is Richard going to the hardware store for some parts. He starts speaking to the security guard when he realizes the owner isn't there to meet him, while the security guard just blankly stares at him. We next see the hilarious sight of Richard driving down the street in his Captain Pike wheelchair prop. To the viewer, the guy looks completely mad, but the doc tries to somehow show that none of the people shown are hurting others, so why not? Well, maybe not Debbie Warner and her dodgy slash fiction stories. Her story, The Secret Logs of Mistress Janeway, sounds quite painful after she explains it. Generally, fans have their own specific interests within fandom. When asked who is the best Star Trek captain, no one can really seem to agree. That would be James Tiberius Kirk. One amusing moment happens when a fan dressed as a Bajoran Vedic responds that they're all great before being corrected by her cosplaying disciple friends to say the emissary. Some of these people, like Eric Larson, have become famous due to their huge collections of memorabilia. We've seen fans use the intellectual property to, no pun intended, engage discussion. Joyce Mason and Evelyn DeBassi set up Trek Talk and Beyond to discuss all things Star Trek. I was actually on Trek Talk because there was no other radio show talking about the shows. Glenn Prochell runs the Interstellar Language School, a Klingon language school, all based on the language developed by Dr. Mark Okrand. It looks like a lot of fun, but at times it comes across like a bunch of fans spouting gibberish in the hope of sounding Klingon. I don't speak Klingon, so for all I know, they probably are. Some fans even managed to turn their love of the franchise into a fan film project like then 15-year-old Gabriel Kerner did with his fan film Space Station Nemesis. Ah yes, how could I not mention Gabriel Kerner? A divisive member of the fan community, he's someone you either see valued or as toxic depending on who you speak to. Kerner comes across as highly articulate and organized enough for his age to lead a fan group to make a fan movie. The guy loves Star Trek and has his father drive him to conventions in a van that's been converted to look like a shuttlecraft. Still, Kerner seems like a control freak, complaining about details on a uniform made for him not being the correct length, and at one point, shouting down the phone to a friend. I think it's supposed to be funny? Having later gotten the opportunity to work in the Star Trek franchise, Kerner is all too happy to patronize others online by reminding people how much more knowledgeable he is. Apparently he's bipolar, which might account for some of his behavior, but sometimes it doesn't feel like an excuse. We learned from one fan that she set up a Brent Spiner fan club called the Spiner Femmes. Meanwhile, the actor in question doesn't quite know how to react. I couldn't stop reacting to their early use of the internet. Wow, the internet back then sure was laggy. Fan behavior can be kind as well. Brandon Braga is interviewed where he explains that a fan has sent him a package about something, to the office every day for the past 10 years. That's a lot of random stuff to send in. I'm personally more shocked at seeing Brandon so young and optimistic toward the franchise. I miss that Brandon. It's not just him that's interviewed. In fact, a whole host of actors from the various series are interviewed, many of which are no longer with us. Most are bemused by the fan appreciation, but greatly respect the devotion to this IP. This documentary must contain one of DeForest Kelley's last appearances in film before he became the first main Star Trek actor to pass away. I suppose you could count The Brave Little Toaster Goes to Mars as his last screen appearance, but I doubt many want to. LeVar Burton is on hand to explain the origin of the character Geordi LaForge. Apparently the character originated as a disabled fan called Jordan LaForge, who upon his death Gene Roddenberry honored his memory by creating a character for him in Star Trek The Next Generation. James Doohan's quick thinking and generosity is also presented. His story of helping a suicidal fan has been told many times before, yet it never fails to amaze how actors reaching out to fans in some cases can be life-saving. Finally, we also get an explanation of what a Trekkie versus a Trekker is. Various fans and actors offer their opinions, but without a definite answer. Someone who works at the Griffith Observatory comes close to describing Trekkers as casual fans and Trekkies as hardcore fans, since they fit the description of what a fanatic is. The debate continues. Upon release, a film like Trekkies was a long overdue look at the global phenomenon. The main issue with it is its need to look at the extreme sides of fandom for the sake of entertainment. I can understand why some fans may feel it exploits them. From a content point of view, it would of course be less interesting, but maybe more of an effort to look at the less extreme side of fandom, and that would present a more rounded documentary. Check out Trekkies 2, where they go around the world. The lack of interviews with anybody outside of America is also disappointing, showing a bias on the filmmaker's part. Au contraire, Trekkies 2. It's something that would be rectified in the sequel. Oh, you already know that. Well, there you go. There's a lot to enjoy here, but it seems to have a lot to unload, making the doc running time feel a lot longer than it should have, without giving us much depth to the people we meet. As mentioned already, Trekkies is an amazing time capsule into a period where Star Trek was at the height of what it could do, both creatively and commercially, before franchise fatigue and horrible reboot attempts soured what made the franchise strong during the 20th century. The most revealing statement made is regarding diversity. For all this talk about needing inclusivity and diversity in Star Trek today, one fan makes the important point that the series always showed diversity through its alien life forms or cultures. It was a lesson to be tolerant and accepting of others that don't look like you. It just goes to show that's not who you cast in a series that provides diversity, but making that message accessible through the writing. It's easy to laugh at the people featured in this documentary saying, "What have you done with your lives?" But considering the diehard fandom for something like football or baseball exists, those supposed crazy people could easily turn around and ask us what we've done with our lives. Over the years, more than anything, actual Star Trek has managed to bring people together, regardless of their backgrounds, uniting and offering a universe to engage with others like themselves. One kid late in the documentary sums up the franchise best when he says, Star Trek allows every age group of a person, regardless if they're a child or an adult, a reason to goof off. I couldn't have put it better myself. And that comes from Pedro Ferreira. Well, a long letter, but a good letter, Pedro. I want to thank you for writing in. Very much appreciated, sir. Okay, I obviously, Roger Nygard, the director of Trekkies, and myself were actually guests of honor at a convention in Tel Aviv, Israel in 2005. He brought Trekkies and I brought Free Enterprise, and we showed them. And I have to say, first of all, I didn't realize Israel had such an active fan community. It was a great convention. The mayor of Tel Aviv showed up. It was at the Tel Aviv Cinematheque, adjacent to the university there. And I met a lot of great people. I had a lot of fun at that convention. And man, there was a lot of all the best elements of fandom, and maybe some wacky elements were there. But for the most part, I met people I'm friends with to this day. So, and that was one of the great things that came out of Trekkies and Free Enterprise. And then, of course, Roger put me in Trekkies 2, and Denise Crosby came to my house, which was great. I mean, obviously, at the time, I was married. So, I just sat down and was very, very mindful of Denise Crosby when I really was having other thoughts. But she was great. It was so cool to have her come over. And if you get the DVD, there's a lot of myself and my ex-wife on the special features. But I think that Trekkies was very necessary at the time. And yeah, you go back and you look at it, like you said, it was a time capsule, and it does revel in the goofier side of fandom. But if I can only speak to my own extreme Star Trek fandom, really Star Trek led me to other things. It led me to start reading science fiction, which led me to a lot of other things. And I think the great thing about Star Trek, more than anything, the thing that if you are a Star Trek fan, for the most part, and I know that there's lots of different kinds of fans. There's a lot of people that become fans of this stuff because, maybe the rest of their lives aren't as exciting or meaningful as they might want them to be. So Star Trek fandom, or fandom of any kind, genre fandom, allows you to find a community of people that you wouldn't find otherwise. People that are like-minded, so you develop friends in those communities and friends you might not otherwise have. I think that's the best part of fandom, is that it brings you together with a community of people that like the same things that you do. For me, I didn't really have that because I didn't have the internet, and I didn't have very many friends that were Star Trek fans. So for me, Star Trek just led me to my other interests. And that was one of the great things about Star Trek fandom for me is that there was so much. It just made me interested in the universe, not just the world around me, but the universe. And I think that there's a little bit of that in Trekkies, which I think is pretty damn good. So yeah, good stuff. Now let's see what you guys are saying over here in the live chat. Let's jump over there, and of course we have. How are you? Are you good today? I hope so. Thanks you for the tip. Never lose your nerd. Says Dune was great and bring on all the sequels. Well, never lose your nerd. I will drink to that. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, I'm telling you, this is the stuff. Love it. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's an experience. I do not think it's perfect. I know Adrian Iscaria, a producer friend of mine, is like, it's a masterpiece. Well, I think it's a masterpiece of craft. I will grant you that. As storytelling, I think there's things that I feel are missing from the story. And I can see where they were cut for time and things like that. Maybe we'll get a longer version of the movie. Logan Astrup says, I just got out of seeing Dune for the third time. Twice in IMAX. I walked out of the theater and saw the news that Part 2 was confirmed, and I was so happy. Logan, today is a great day. A great day, comrades. We sail into history. That's a little Sean Connery. We sail into history from The Hunt for Red October. Rhett Proctor is here. Rhett Proctor says, well, with Dune out of the way, I'm officially ready for Spider-Man No Way Home. It makes me feel like I'm 8 years old again. I think I'm more excited for Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin to be returning than Tobey and Andrew. Well, Rhett, all of that's still rumored, right? We shall see if they drop a trailer. But yeah, I'm excited. I mean, from what I've heard, it's quite the blowout of a movie. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Pretty cool. Although I have to say, I do feel that, I would love to see a Spider-Man movie that is just Spider-Man. That I know. I guess we've kind of seen that, but just to pull back on the rest of the MCU. How about if it goes back to Sony, I think the next Spider-Man movie should be called Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and have something local, something that's going on. Have Spider-Man have to protect the neighborhood, not reality warping, being on Titan, fighting Thanos kind of stuff. But that's just me. But I'm looking forward to it. I mean, look, how can I not look forward to such a reality-splitting extravaganza? I think it's going to be great. Can't wait. Stubble McShave says, there are rumblings that the main trailer to Wheel of Time will be released tomorrow. Also, you can see character descriptions, an interactive map, and a timeline on the Explore section of the Amazon Prime site. Ooh, I got to check that out. It has little info now, but will probably be expanded upon. Well, for those of you who are new around these parts, Stubble McShave is a longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity, a foundational member, if you will, and no one, and I mean no one, loves Wheel of Time more than he does. I can't imagine. I mean, he must just... I imagine when Stubble McShave gets out of the shower in the morning, he literally must dance around on his tippy toes with excitement because he cannot wait for Wheel of Time. Although he's 6'5", so he probably would bump his head on the ceiling, so maybe he doesn't do that. But I only imagine that he does. Do you do that, Stubble? Maybe we shouldn't know. Willow Yang says, I confess I've never seen Lynch's Dune. What are your general thoughts on the movie, and is there anything that you think Lynch did better than Villeneuve or vice versa? Well, I'll tell you something. One of my favorite YouTubers is this woman named Mariana Neal, who has a channel called Impression Blend. And I love her because she's either Russian or Ukrainian, and I love that. But she also covers a lot of books. Her taste in horror is impeccable, and she really knows her sci-fi. She tried to watch Dune. She had never seen Lynch's Dune ever before. She knew it didn't have a great reputation. Man, she was not having any of it. I was kind of bummed out. I was like, oh, man. I mean, I did send her, I think I sent her a link. There's a version of Dune. Willow, if you're going to watch Dune, this is what I'm going to tell you to do. I've got to find it. Hang on. Dune. I'm going to find it. Yes, okay. I'm going to put it on the live in the live chat. This is by far the best version of David Lynch's Dune, and it's on YouTube. Thank God it's never been pulled down. It is called the Dune 1984 Alternative Edition Redux, the Spice Diver Fan Edit. It is the best version of Lynch's Dune because it combines all the deleted scenes with television stuff and the television sequences. I'm putting this into the live chat right now. If you guys want to watch what I think is the definitive version of Dune, and by the way, I love it because there's a commercial for the new Dune in front of it. Watch that. So, there are things about, and it's hard to gauge this having read the book and seen Lynch's version so many times. The Lynch's version gets into things that the Denis Villeneuve version doesn't address yet. Like you meet the head of the Landsraad, the Padishah Emperor, House Carino. You see his daughter, Princess Irulan, and you really understand that. I think it's clearer in Lynch's version that what is happening to the Atreides and House. Well, I would say I've always said House Harkonnen, but it's Harkonnen according to Villeneuve's Dune. But the fact that the Harkonnens are totally in cahoots with the Empire, the Emperor, to get rid of the Atreides because the Atreides, Duke Leto, is beloved by the rest of the Landsraad and threatens House Carino, threatens the Padishah Emperor's power. So they conspire to get rid of the Atreides. And I think that you do know a little bit more, but I understand why Denis Villeneuve didn't go into that because it adds a whole nother layer of plot that you don't have to get to until the second half of the book, which we're going to get into. So, I mean, I do like that. I think, and there's a little bit more. I mean, I think, look, both my only real complaint with Denis Villeneuve's version of Dune is there's a lot of the characters that we just see a few moments from them. I would have watched that movie for another 20 minutes to get more things that were fleshed out, more things that are fleshed out. And I know the world building, like I don't think people quite get, and it's certainly not in the David Lynch version, except at the beginning. There are no machines and no computers in the Dune universe. They have been outlawed. So I don't think it's really, that's why there's not cool holographic control panels and all that. There's no artificial intelligence anymore. That's why there are Mentats. That's why there's the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. That's why there's the Spacing Guild and all that. So, I just think some of the world building was left out, and I think the David Lynch version does sometimes a little bit more than that. But that's the big thing. Louis Terrasa says, many of those hurt see Western civilization as the Harkonnens. Not exact, but in many ways, Dune shows how fucked up the human experience is. We never deserved Earth. Well, you could look at it that way. I mean, in the Dune universe, I think Earth is lost, right? Do people know where Earth is anymore? But I definitely see it as that. I mean, Lynch did a pretty good job. But I would say that the thing about Dune is it's all about how the messianic impulse, all of these messianic leaders that, whether it's Christ, whether it's Muhammad, probably not such a good idea to follow him. We see where all that goes, but we won't see that until Dune Messiah. I hope they make that. That's always been my hope, that it would be a 3-part thing. Because you could end, if you wanted to, you could end at Dune Messiah, have the 3 movies, and you see the rise and fall of Paul Atreides, and you won't get, if you're not going to do Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune, you won't see Leto II become the God Emperor, but whatever. I mean, I would like to see the whole thing. I would love it if Denis Villeneuve did all 6 of Herbert's books, not the rest of them, but Herbert's books. I like that idea. We never deserved Earth. No, we did deserve Earth. The whole story is a cautionary tale. We gotta make sure that we don't screw it all up. We don't want to screw it all up. Sheriff Carl says, Rob, my dude, Dune is upon us, and we are now getting the next part. Pretty surprised to see all of the less than stellar talk about it being boring, complicated, or soulless. I thought it was one of the finest movie experiences I've ever had. Dune rules. Well, Sheriff Carl, that's because you probably went to the theater and saw it. I think it's different, you know. I think that's part of that's part of the thing. It becomes a different movie. It's like seeing 2001 in a theater in 70 millimeter. It's overwhelming if you see it in a great theater. And I think that's why I'm a big proponent of that experience. Louis Terrasas says, Dune was magnificent, by the way, as I always knew it could be. I've seen it twice already, and I'm definitely going to see it 3 more times. This is a legacy film. I agree. Louis also goes on to say, you know what else really sucks? The major influences Dune obviously had on later sci-fi, and yet so many will pretend that this was never the case. Sad. Oh my God. I've tried to explain to people how hugely influential, like when I was growing up, you know, when I was in really, I've told this story a million times, but I joined the sci-fi book club when I was 10 years old in the 4th grade. And the great legacy science fiction novels, I mean, obviously there's twice as many as there was then. But I mean, Dune was one of those things. You had to read Dune. You had to read Robert Heinlein's Strange in a Strange Land. You know, you had to read Foundation. These were things you had to read. Then, you know, there were other things like Paul Anderson's Gateway or Larry Niven's Ringworld and his known space books. And I mean, now you have Ian Banks's Culture series, and there's Peter Hamilton and Charles Stross. I mean, there's so many writers now, but back in the day, if you didn't read those seminal science fiction books, it was hard to be a fan if you went to like a science fiction convention. There was a convention called NorwestCon that was in Seattle, the Seattle area. And if you went to a science fiction convention, it was as much literary as it was media-based. I mean, now things are mostly media-based. But back then, there just wasn't that many great science fiction films yet. You know, there wasn't a lot to talk about in those pre-Blade Runner days. You had Planet of the Apes. You had 2001. People didn't think that Star Wars was a science fiction movie. And then you had, you know, Forbidden Planet, Solaris, which is, again, based on a book. I don't even think like Roadside Picnic had been adapted into Stalker yet, but you know, you had to read books. And nowadays I don't know if people really are interested. How many people, when was the last time you heard somebody talking about Stranger in a Strange Land? I've talked about what it meant to grok something. Like I used to have a button I had on my jacket in junior high school that said I grok Spock. Now if you ask somebody what does grok mean, they'll be like, I don't know. like everyone knew what grok meant. You know, because you read Heinlein. And by the way, I'm not going to tell you now. I've said it before. Look it up. But, you know, what does it mean to grok anything? Does anybody grok anything these days? I don't know. Sheriff Carl says, last night a drunk coworker, or a coworker drunk texted me telling me Dune was bunk. He couldn't follow the plot. No shit. It's not Jackass 3. Thought he was at home. He was texting me in the theater. I called him a stupid asshole for that. The sheriff's most displeased with him. Yeah, you know, maybe that was part of it. Watching Dune hammered. Now, if you want to get stoned, if you want to sample the dank nugs before you see Dune, especially in IMAX, I can only imagine it must, like the spice itself, expand your mind and horizons. So it'd be a whole different experience. Wolverine626 says, do you think Warner Brothers will continue beyond Dune Part 2 when it performs on par with Dune Part 1? Well, you know, let's see where Dune goes. You know, I mean, I think if Dune ends up, if they're able to eke out $500 million, I think that'll be a win. You know, I think that'd be pretty good. We shall see. I think Dune might have some staying power. I think people, the fact that like almost 50% of the people that saw Dune in the theater were seeing it in large format theaters, that tells me something. I think people are going to go back. I think it's going to get some good repeat viewing. So yeah. Rhett Proctor says, I think the Flash movie and Spider-Man No Way Home are very similar. Both are multiverse movies and both have multiple versions of the heroes. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, Rob. Well, Rhett, I think it's really interesting that obviously, look, for me, while the Marvel universe, the Marvel comic universe has always had a multiverse, to me, it was the DC universe when I was a kid. Their multiverse was my go-to multiverse. Because growing up in the 70s, my favorite comic was Justice League of America. And every year, the Justice League would team up with the Justice Society of America from Earth 2. And to me, that was peak multiverse. And I loved it. And I think and obviously the Flash of Two Worlds, the Jay Garrick Flash and the Barry Allen Flash, to me that was always like the ground zero of where this idea of the multiverse with the cosmic treadmill and all that stuff began. So the fact that there's a Flash movie that's based on Flashpoint, that goes way back into the DC Comics legacy, way back. I think it's the early 60s, right? The Flash of Two Worlds was early 60s, I think, if memory serves. So I think it's interesting that they've adopted this multiverse idea kind of at the same time. But it makes sense because there's all these different people are talking about, Sony made Into the Spider-Verse. And once you make Into the Spider-Verse and you see how clever it was and how the possibility of, my God, if you have a multiverse, you can do all kinds of things. And then you start looking into the history of things like Kang and the quantum realm, and obviously the first indications of multiverse stuff was in Endgame. And which was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to go back and revisit those places. And so I think, can both Flash and Spider-Man No Way Home be good movies? I think so. I think we're all now, because of this Flash TV series and Crisis on Infinite Earths and all that crap, we're conditioned now to love multiverse stories. They can only bring us joy and contentment. At least I would hope so. So I'm looking forward to it. Again, like everything else, it depends how well it's done. It depends how well it's done. Roberto Suarez, I hope you are feeling better, Roberto. My personal standout performance in Dune was Rebecca Ferguson. Her agony when Paul was being tested, her reaction to the Reverend Mother's chastising when confronted her for her hubris. She was, to me, the most multidimensional, flawed, and relatable character. I couldn't agree with you more. First of all, she's very beautiful, but she's a great actress. She's one of the great parts about the Mission Impossible movies, but I agree with you, Roberto. She's phenomenal, and her performance was great. And again, I do feel like I would like to have seen more of the Reverend Mother. I would give just a few more scenes with these people because I really like them, and they all these great actors, and it's we just didn't get that much of them. I'd like to have seen more, and I also think that Baron Harkonnen, I'd like to have certainly I'd like to see more of those things, and hopefully we will. Key Lime Killis has made the drive from Key West to Miami to see Dune in IMAX, and wow, what an experience. This was my first time in an IMAX theater, and I was blown away by the picture and sound. Can't wait to go back. Well, Key Lime Killer, you've taken your first step into a larger world. Isn't it great? I mean, you can't even, until you've experienced it, you don't know. And I'm glad, first of all, you had that experience. And now you can see why it's valuable. And the fact that you made the drive from Key West to Miami, the fact that you felt that was now worthy of something that, and you had an experience you won't soon forget. That's exactly what I was talking about. You know what? The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in that pudding. And you got to have some very, very tasty pudding, sir. So that's good. Lukey Wan says, Rob, I love what you do. Theater are over is sad to me. Streaming over theaters is akin to a drive-up window is better than mom's home cooking. Lukey Wan, well put. Sad. Well, I understand. I mean, look, here's what's interesting to me. When I was growing up, I had lots of friends that were substantially older than me. When I was like 13, 14, 15, going to all the Seattle Film Festival events and all the screenings that would happen in Seattle, it was a small but very close-knit film community. And I learned from people that were older than me. I learned what movies to see, and we were always going to the theater. And one of my friends his name was Craig Hyland, or his name is still Craig Hyland. He would bitch and moan and complain if the projection wasn't razor sharp. And back then, the people that ran the theaters in Seattle made sure that their venues were great. And I would never say to someone, if somebody said something and I felt, look, even if I felt they were a pretentious asshole, I would smile. You respect people. I respected everybody that was significantly older than me because I learned from them. There is no more respect anymore. It's the Simpsons effect. We're now living in the shadow of the Simpsons. So for 30 years, Bart Simpson was the smartest guy on that show, and his father was a dumbass. And that idea that youth knows best is something that I think is really problematic in American culture. So And I understand on the internet everyone's voice is equal, right? We're all equal, all one people. But I understand how if somebody, look, my whole thing is if somebody doesn't like something that I particularly like, I never get mad at that person. I listen, I try to understand, wow, why is that? Why do we have this schism? Like, I don't know why my friend Adrian Iscaria cannot recognize the genius that is Star Trek the Motion Picture. No, I'm kidding. I can. I understand where people are coming from. But, I would always try and understand what people that had dissenting views, what do they mean? Like, why do they feel the way they feel? And nowadays, I feel that not only do people don't know why they believe the things that they believe, but nobody cares to listen to what I believe either, especially when it comes to genre spaces. Like everyone says, if I hate Star Trek Discovery, I go on Twitter and say I hate Star Trek Discovery, and it becomes a personal attack against me. Like, I never come out and personally attack people for their beliefs. I've attacked talent, people that have created things who I believe should do better. But it's interesting. You watch these fan arguments where it all comes down to something very personal. And to me, when you're talking about what do you or don't like, like when someone says to me, "Well, Dune was boring. I didn't like it." Well, that's okay. Why did you think it was boring? And I always want to know what bores people. Why does it bore you? Does it bore you because, like, I don't want to, say that, well, no, it's not boring, you're boring. I mean, but what is it that bores you? And, I mean, I can understand the pacing issues, but I'm curious, when somebody says, well, that sucked. Well, why did it suck? What was it about? Why did you think it sucked? And I always prefer criticism where somebody can give me cogent criticism about why they feel the way they do about certain things. I think that's important, and we're missing that out. Tom Jr. It's fun. It's funny you say this, Tom Jr. Jackson. Rob, does the Robservatory have a mini fridge? No. No. My mini fridge, I had an R2-D2 mini fridge. It was taken away. And then I tried to get one of those Han Solo and Carbonite mini fridges. Didn't get that. But is it Home Depot? There is a mini fridge that I really, really want. And there's two different colors. There's a red one and a black one. And there's a place for it right over there. That it looks like a 50s mini fridge. I think it was at Home Depot, or maybe it was at Kohl's or something. It was like something like that, but it was awesome, and it was like it's like a mini. It's almost as tall as me, a little shorter, but I'm gonna get it. There has not been a mini fridge in here. We need a mini fridge. Although the thing is, I'd have to clean it up so I can get over there because there's a place for it right over there, and it does not. That's an interesting question, Tom. I am surrounded by Zevia and wine and all kinds of things that should be cold and isn't. Why I don't have a mini fridge, I don't know. Don't know, as the drinker would say. Regis K says, bless the maker and his water. The spice will flow again. It will flow again, Regis K, and thank God we're better people for it. Rep Proctor, back again. Rep Proctor says, well, with Eternals mixed reviews, I feel I will either love it or hate it. But all film is subjective. As a Marvel fan, I will find out myself. Well, Rhett, if you've been on this channel long enough, I don't believe that. I do not believe that all film is subjective. I believe people's opinions are subjective. But I don't trust people to know always whether art is or... I don't think art is subjective. I think that there is an objective... that art has an objective greatness to it. Now, I think what proves that, well, multiple people's points of view and time itself, history will say that. I mean, if you go on to say like, oh, I don't really like the Stones song "Sympathy for the Devil," you're flat out wrong, because it's a great rock and roll song. And I'm not just saying that because it's my opinion. If you could measure people's I think measure your response in your brain to hearing those certain riffs. I mean, but yeah, somebody doesn't have to, you don't have to like the Rolling Stones, but you can't tell me that a song like "Sympathy for the Devil" isn't good. You might not like it. That's what I mean. Your opinions are all everyone's opinions are subjective. That doesn't mean that Sympathy for the Devil is not a great rock song, because it is. Whether you like it or not, well, it's just like Dune. I thought it was boring. That's fine. You can think Dune's boring. Does that make it boring? Is the Shawshank Redemption? I mean, you look on it. Is the Godfather? Is the Shawshank Redemption? Are those movies that people would say that it's subjective? It's not. No, it is not subjective. But everybody's different. But that doesn't mean that the thing that we're talking about isn't great. And I will die on that hill. I will die on that hill. Jason C. Brand sends in a super chat, says, who would you cast for the parts we haven't seen yet for Dune 2? Ooh. Irulan, the Emperor, and Fade. Oh, you know who I would well, no, it really, okay. Irulan, it would really have to depend on, let's see, God, that's tough, man. You know what? I have to say, the first person that comes to mind for Princess Irulan is Lily James. Just because I love me some Lily James. Although, to be honest, I gotta say, Emma Chan. I know she's Cersei, but watching Emma Chan wander around this world and listening to her talk and her voice, I mean, what's not to love? What's not to love about Emma Chan? And just go that route. But I don't know. It'd be really interesting. Like, how do you do House Carino? I don't know who I would cast. I mean, I'd have to think about that, because do you go, like, what I liked about Jose Ferrer as the Padishah Emperor is that, he had a couple of different, he was mixed. He had a couple of different things going on there. But then Virginia Madsen was a little too white. Although I liked Princess Irulan, I did. And of course, Alicia Witt is Alia. You gotta love her. It's my brother, Baron. I mean, all that stuff was great. I don't know. That would be tough. It would be tough. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I have to think about that. And Fade Routha. A lot of people somebody said Tom Hardy would be a great Fade, but again, I think you'd have to go. I mean, Fade and the Beast Raban kind of looked kind of vaguely similar. I mean, I don't know. Maybe as what's his face? Skarsgård. Get the young Skarsgård to play Fade, who played Pennywise. He could do it. Youngest Skarsgård, right? I'd go that way. Bill Skarsgård. Why not? That, because the link that he would have to the Baron would be cool. But yeah, that's off the top of my head. Zachary P says, saw Dune in 3D D-box seats, Atmos sound, the vibrations of the sound hitting from the front and the chair rumbling from behind, amazingly immersive. Wow, that would actually be pretty fun. I can't even imagine. Although it would really bother me if any of the speakers vibrated like it was too. One of my pet peeves. I can't stand blown speakers or if speakers are rattling because I can't handle the power. That would bum me out. Ooh. Sheriff Carl says, I was definitely indulging on the spice melange during all viewings. Sheriff Carl went for the dank nugs again, huh? I love that a lot of what influenced Herbert was tripping on shrooms in the dunes outside of Florence, Oregon. It's true. Would you believe it? I have done that too. Yes, even before knowing this great fact. Yeah, that's a lot of where Frank Herbert came up with the idea of Dune, was when he was doing reporting on that area and how the dunes would, if I remember correctly, it was dune erosion and how the dunes would literally move, like the whole thing would shift and move around. So yeah, that's absolutely true, Sheriff Carl. Absolutely true. Late Night Alum says, I saw Lamb from A24 in theaters on Sunday. If there is a what the fuck award for films, it wins easily. Weirdest film I've watched this year. I can't wait to see it, dude. A24's their taste in horror for me is impeccable. Everything from like it's The Witch or Midsummer or Hereditary or whatever. I'm down, man. Count me in. Count me in. I want to see it. I haven't seen it yet. But you're not the first person to tell me that, which means, hey, it's right up my alley. Well, everyone, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls from across these, the 28 known galaxies, I'm going to end Robservations episode number 755. I want to thank everybody here. I want to thank you for generously supporting the channel via super chats and tips. Thank you for sending me letters if you want to. I know I'm behind on letters. You can write me at the Burnettwork.net website and send me letters there. So, yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. We will have hot toys on Heel versus Babyface. Pardon me. Yeah, the Heel versus Babyface channel on YouTube, Az and I. And then on Thursday, we are going to be, like we did with The Prisoner, Az and I are going to be delving into Squid Game on an episode-by-episode basis. We're the Calamari Bros, and we're going to talk about Squid Game. So that should be fun. And then I'll still be doing, obviously, Robservations tomorrow. I might be doing a Midnighter tomorrow night, too. So Jeremiah, come on back, son. And, yeah, doing the Midnighter. Let's see what more is going on. That's what's going on. Verb, that's what's happening if you're a Schoolhouse Rock fan. And on that note, I would say remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I'll be jumping over to Justin from Justin's Collections channel at 5 o'clock. We will be talking toys and toys and toys and toys. Boys and toys. Why? What more do you want? I mean, you know, I can't think of anything more. And, you know, it's fun to wear my sword, my Monica Rambeau sword sweatshirt. I haven't worn this since last year. It's good to have it back. It's all nice and clean. Yeah. Love it. I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Justin Toner. I want to thank Louise X. Sparrow. Greg Smith is here. How are you, Greg? Who else is here? I don't know. Justin, did I say that? I think I said everybody. Love you guys. Love the Blue Wrench Brigade. Best moderators on YouTube. That's right. And on that note, as always, I would say to all of you, have a better day.